The sliding doors of St. Gabriel Medical Center's emergency department opened at 3:47 in the morning. Rain hammered the glass awning outside and pooled on the linoleum by the entrance in a thin, dirty sheen. Dr. Alan Mercer did not look up from the whiteboard. He stood at the central station with a dry erase marker in one hand and a stack of printouts in the other, glasses low on his nose. The board glowed under the fluorescent lights filled with patient names, bed numbers, color-coded stickers. His world was boxes and arrows and policy. The soft squeak of wet sneakers on tile drew closer. Dr. Riley Cole walked in, scrubs, wrinkled hair pulled back in a practical knot. There were shadows under her eyes, the kind that came from too many nights and not enough sleep. She moved straight to the sanitizer dispenser, pressed once, and rubbed her hands together without looking down the sequence, exact and quick. Mercer capped the marker. "You are 2 hours early, Dr. Cole." Riley did not flinch. She let the sanitizer evaporate and finally turned her head toward him. "Highway was clear," she said. "Figured I would get ahead." Mercer checked the clock mounted above the board, though he already knew the time. "You are not on until 6. We have residents. We have coverage." "I saw the overnight log." Riley nodded toward the board. "You are short 2 nurses, and your junior attending called out sick." Miguel Reyes, the charge nurse, glanced up from his computer. He was in his 50s, shoulders a little rounded from years of leaning over beds, his badge lanyard faded navy blue. He watched them the way someone watched a storm on the horizon. Mercer exhaled. "This is not Kandahar, Bisa," he said. "This is a level 1 academic trauma center in Seattle. We operate on protocol. When I need you, I will page you." Something in Riley's jaw shifted. Not anger, a small clenched muscle memory of biting back a response. "Understood," she said. She turned as if to walk toward the staff lounge. As she moved, the cuff of her scrub top rode up just enough for Reyes to see a sliver of ink on her left forearm. Numbers, a small arc of black lines, then the fabric dropped back into place. The radio on the desk hissed and crackled. "St. Gabriel Medic 7, multi-vehicle collision on I-90. We are 5 minutes out with a male, mid-20s, altered possible head trauma. 2 more rigs behind us, 1 pediatric, 1 mixed adult." Reyes straightened. Mercer's marker tapped against the board, once a small, sharp sound. Riley stopped walking. "That is at least 4 criticals," Reyes said quietly. "Minimum." Mercer looked at the radio, then at the board, then finally at Riley. "Fine," he said. "You can stay, but you follow assignments." Riley did not smile, did not thank him. She just nodded once and stepped toward the trauma bays. As she walked, she rolled her shoulders back like she was shrugging off something heavy. The overhead chime sounded and the speaker clicked on. "Trauma team to Bay 1, trauma team to Bay 1. The ER shifted a gear. Monitors beeped as nurses checked batteries. Curtains rattled on their tracks. The air thickened with anticipation and the faint metallic smell of opened crash carts. Riley pulled on a pair of gloves. Her hands were steady as she snapped the latex into place. Hannah Kim hurried up beside her, hair tucked under a plain scrub-cap stethoscope bouncing against her chest. She was a third-year resident, still wearing the anxious energy of someone who triple-checked every order. "Dr. Cole," Hannah said, slightly out of breath. "I thought you were not on until 6. "Guess I could not sleep," Riley replied. She stepped into Trauma 1 and took the spot at the head of the empty bed. The room was a cage of light and stainless steel overhead lamp wall of suction canisters, bins of gauze, and airway kits, the monitor hanging like a silent judge over the bed. Reyes appeared at her shoulder. "You want me on lines?" he asked. "Please," Riley said. "We are going to need large-bore access on whoever comes through that door." The first ambulance siren grew louder, a rising wail that vibrated in the glass. Then the doors burst open and paramedics pushed in a gurney. Cold air and the smell of wet asphalt followed them. 24-year-old male unrestrained driver, the lead medic recited, breath visible in the cool air. Windshield spidered steering wheel deformity. GCS dropped from 9 to 6 on road. Pupils sluggish. BP 90/60, heart rate 140. 2 large-bore IVs running wide open. "On my count," Riley said. 1, 2, 3. They lifted the patient to the trauma bed. His head lolled, blood matted his hair. Glass glittered in the folds of the blanket. Riley leaned in with her penlight. "Open your eyes for me," she said. He did not respond. She checked pupils. Both reactive, but the left was slower. She placed her fingers along his neck, feeling for tracheal shift for crepitus. "Trachea midline," she called. "No subcutaneous air." She pressed the stethoscope to his chest, moving quickly from side to side. Breath sounds diminished on the right. "Pneumo," Hannah asked. "Possible. Portable chest X-ray and trauma labs," Riley said. "Type and cross 6 units. Get blood to the bedside." Reyes was already at the computer terminal, ordering, his fingers flying over the keys. "Do we intubate?" Hannah kept her eyes on the monitor. GCS is 6. Not yet, Riley said. He is borderline. We push sedatives now, his pressure bottoms out. We lose the little perfusion he has left. But if he vomits, aspirates, we watch him, Riley said. If he drops one more point, we tube. Until then, we keep his brain alive. Her voice stayed calm even. The decision was built into it. The radio crackled again. St. Gabriel Medic 9, 9-year-old female restrained rear seat passenger, hypotensive tachycardic, bruising to chest and abdomen, ETA 3 minutes. Riley's eyes flicked to the doorway, then back to the young man on the bed. Hannah, she said, you have him? Hannah blinked. Me. You know what to do. Riley's gaze was already tracking to the next drama. Watch his neurostatus. If his GCS hits 5, you call it and you intubate. Do not wait for permission. Reyes shifted smoothly into position by the monitor. I will keep an eye on him, he told Hannah. Riley stripped off her gloves, tossed them into the bin, and stepped out into the hall. The second gurney was already coming in smaller, the blanket a bright cartoon print smeared with gray dust. The girl looked even smaller against the adult-sized stretcher. Her skin was pale freckles standing out like dots of paint. Her eyes were half open, unfocused. 9-year-old female, the paramedic said. His voice sounded slightly shaken. Belted in the back seat. Significant front-end collision. Seatbelt sign over chest. BP 80/40, heart rate 160. Riley moved to the girl's side. Sweetheart, she said, voice softening. My name is Dr. Cole. Can you tell me where you are? The girl's lips moved, but no sound came out. Riley's hands went straight to the chest fingers, pressing lightly along the ribs. She could feel the uneven rise, the way certain segments moved in against the breath instead of out. Flail segment left side, she said. At least 3 ribs. The paramedic frowned. We did not see that under the blankets. You were busy keeping her alive on the road, Riley said. You did fine. She moved down to the abdomen, pressing in quick, systematic quadrants. The girl's body tensed under her fingers, a sudden guarding under the left rib cage. She's guarding here, Pesquisi. Riley's voice sharpened. Possible splenic injury. We need a fast exam now, and we need the OR on standby. Hannah had followed to the doorway, unsure if she should step in or stay back. She watched as a tech wheeled the ultrasound machine into place. Riley grabbed the probe and gel, her movements fast practiced. The lights dimmed slightly as the screen came to life, gray and black images shifting with every sweep of her hand. The room grew quieter. There, Riley said. A dark pool appeared in the left upper quadrant, shaping itself against the curve of the spleen. Free fluid, she said. Probable splenic laceration. She looked up at Reyes, who had appeared again as if summoned by habit. Page surgery, tell them pediatric unstable splenic bleed. I want an attending ready, not a fellow. Reyes nodded and moved. In the half-light of the monitor, the planes of Riley's face looked carved all angles in shadow. The greenish glow reflected off something at her wrist. For a moment, as she adjusted her grip on the probe, a narrow strip of tattoo showed numbers a degree symbol, a small curve like a river. Hannah's gaze caught on it, but only for a second. Then Riley set the probe aside and stripped off her gloves. Stay with her until they roll, Riley told Hannah. Keep her warm. Talk to her. About what? Hannah asked. Startled. Anything, Riley said. You keep kids in the world. That is half the job. Orderlies arrived with a transport gurney. The girl's bed began to move, wheels squeaking, monitors chiming softly. As they pushed her toward the double doors that led to the elevators, Riley walked alongside for a few steps, one hand on the rail watching the monitor. The overhead lights reflected on the polished floor in streaks of white. At the corner, she stopped. You have her, she said to the OR nurse. We have her, the nurse replied. Riley watched until the doors closed on them. Only then did she turn back toward the trauma bays. The ER had not quieted, but something about the noise had changed. The adrenaline spike from the initial rush was settling into a steady hum. Nurses moved with purpose instead of urgency. The rain outside still tapped against the windows. Hannah stood by the nurse's station, fingers wrapped around a styrofoam cup of coffee, gone cold, eyes still wide. She watched Riley walk past scrub top spattered with a few dots of blood gloves hanging loose from one hand. Riley's expression did not say much. Her hands, though, were completely still. Dr. Cole, Hannah called. Riley paused. Yes. You were right about both of them, Hannah said. The head trauma, the spleen. You saw it before we had anything. It is just pattern recognition, Riley replied. You do this long enough, you stop thinking in words. She moved toward the charting station. Behind her, the green exit sign over the stairwell door glowed faintly, its arrow pointing outward into the dark. Riley did not look at it. She sat down at the computer instead and started typing. The sirens outside kept coming. The coffee in the resident lounge tasted like it had been burned twice. Hannah Kim cupped the paper mug in both hands anyway, The warmth seeped into her fingers and helped a little with the tremor she pretended she did not have. The lounge was a narrow room with a couch that had seen too many night shifts and a table scarred with initials carved into the laminate. The television in the corner played a muted news channel, the captions lagging half a second behind the video. Ben Holloway slouched in a chair opposite her, one leg bouncing so fast the table shook. He had dark circles under his eyes and a half-eaten muffin on a napkin in front of him. His white coat was draped over the back of the chair, wrinkled and stained at one cuff. "I am telling you," Ben said, "she's not normal." He was talking faster than usual. That was how Hannah knew he was still wired from the night. Gossip was his favorite stimulant. "Who?" Hannah asked, though she already knew. "Dr. Cole." Ben leaned forward and tapped his finger against the table for emphasis. "You saw her. That spleen. She knew before the ultrasound tech even wheeled through the door." Hannah thought of Riley's hands on the girl's abdomen, the quick, precise pressure, the way she had picked the one quadrant that made the child flinch. The image sat in her chest like a stone. "That is called clinical judgment," Hannah said. "Experience." "That is called something else," Ben answered. "You know she never comes to happy hour, never shows up to journal club unless Mercer drags her. I asked around. Nobody knows her. Not really." A third resident, Carla Nguyen, looked up from her charting at the far end of the table. Her hair was piled on top of her head in a messy knot pin tucked behind one ear. "Maybe she's just focused," Carla said. "Some people do not like forced socializing." Ben ignored that. "I tried to look up her residency," he said. "Her file says El Paso, VA, some kind of Army liaison program. No presentations, no publications, nothing from the usual places. Then she appears at St. Gabriel Level 1 prime spot. How does that happen?" "Maybe she's good," Carla said. Ben snorted. "People who are that good have a trail, a CV. Yeah? You see something." Hannah took a sip of coffee to give herself a second to think. "She saved that little girl," she said quietly. "Yeah," Ben admitted. His voice softened for the first time. "She did." The door opened. A tech stuck his head in. "Dr. Kim, Dr. Holloway, Dr. Nguyen, morning sign out in 5, he said. "Mercer is in a mood." "When is he not?" Ben muttered, standing. They filed out together. Hannah glanced back at the empty lounge before the door closed. The stain of last night still clung to the place like the smell of old coffee and adrenaline. On the surgical floor, Dr. Omar Haddad stripped off his gloves at the scrub sink and watched the red swirl down the drain. The pediatric spleen had been a mess. He had tried to salvage it, stitching along the torn capsule, but every knot seemed to open another well of blood. In the end, he had tied off the vessels and removed the organ entirely. It was a clean operation. Standard. His hands had done this before. Still, he could not stop replaying the first image in his mind. The ultrasound picture Reyes had sent up from the ER, grainy and gray free fluid blooming in the left upper quadrant. The timestamp from the scan had been 4 minutes after the girl arrived. 4 minutes to see what most attendings waited an hour to confirm. Omar turned and found Reyes restocking sutures at the supply cart. "You work with Cole much?" Omar asked. Reyes glanced over. His expression did not change, but he took a moment to fold the empty suture box. "Some," he said. "What is your read on her?" Omar asked. "You asking if she is competent?" Reyes replied, "or you asking something else?" "I'm asking why someone who can pick a splenic lock in 4 minutes is a junior attending instead of running a trauma unit." Reyes slid a fresh pack of sutures into the bin. "She does not waste movement," he said. "She sees things other people miss." "That is not an answer," Omar said. Reyes closed the cabinet. "It is the only one I have," he said. By noon, the ER had slipped back into its daytime rhythm. The chaos of the early morning crash had been swallowed by the steady churn of minor injuries and fevers and chronic pain. Riley sat in the cramped attending's office, a windowless cube off the main hallway. The desk was cluttered with charts, coffee cups, and a desktop computer that hummed faintly. Someone had pinned a cartoon about burnout to the corkboard. She wrote her notes in tight, efficient sentences. No flourishes. Just what would matter if someone picked up the chart at 2 a.m. The door opened without a knock. "Dr. Cole," Mercer said. He closed the door behind him and remained standing. The overhead light cast a harsh, flat glow on his features. "The girl," he said, "post-op. Omar says she is stable. He thinks she will recover fully." "Good," Riley said. She did not stop typing. Mercer watched her for a moment. The soft clack of keys was the only sound. "You made the right call," he said. Riley's fingers paused for a fraction of a second, then moved again. "She was bleeding," she said. "There were only 2 choices." "You have good instincts," Mercer said. "Better than most at your level." Riley hit save and swiveled the chair to face him. "I had good information," she said. "Ultrasound is not magic." Mercer ignored that. Where did you train? He asked. El Paso, VA, Riley said. Residency, before that Army Medical Corps. Field hospitals, Mercer said. Yes. How long? 8 years, Riley replied. Combat, he asked. She met his eyes. Some, she said. He folded his arms. You do not talk about it, he said. It is not relevant to my contract, she answered. Mercer stepped closer enough that she could see the faint scuff on the toe of his shoe. You move like someone who has worked under fire, he said. You make decisions like someone who has had to choose between bad options and worse ones. That is not something you learn in a residency program. I learned by doing the job, Riley said, same as everyone else. No, both Mercer replied, not the same. His pager buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. Rollover on Highway 2, he said. Older male, possible cardiac event. Ambulance is 3 minutes out. He reached for the door handle, then looked back at her. We will talk again, he said. Riley waited until the door clicked shut. Her hand stayed on her knees, palms flat, but her pulse had picked up a dull thud in her throat. She rolled down her left sleeve. The tattoo disappeared under the fabric. When the ambulance bay doors opened, the air outside was sharp and cold. The rain had shifted to a fine mist that clung to jackets and hair. The paramedics pushed in a gurney with a man in his 60s strapped to it. His hair was silver at the temples, his skin a shade too pale. His jaw was set in the determined line of someone used to ignoring pain. Single vehicle rollover, the medic reported. Driver found conscious self extricated, but he had chest pain before the crash. We are thinking cardiac event, first accident, second. BP 95/50, heart rate 130. He had one episode of VT en route, but converted with a shock. Riley stepped to the side of the bed. Sir, she said, my name is Dr. Cole. We are going to take care of you. His eyes were open, pupils tracking, but there was a drag to them that suggested he was fighting his own body. Where am I? He asked. St. Gabriel Medical Center, Riley said. In Seattle, you were in a car accident. Reyes moved to the far side and began setting up for IV access. Hannah checked the monitor, already reading off the vitals. Riley reached for the man's arm to adjust the line. As she did, her sleeve pulled back just enough to reveal the edge of her tattoo, a cluster of numbers, a degree symbol. The man's gaze dropped to it, his breath caught. Riley did not notice. She was listening to his lungs counting beats under her fingers. The monitor beeped a warning and the rhythm on the screen hiccuped. Getting some ectopy, Hannah said. PVCs and runs. Crash cart, Riley said. The nurses moved. The cart rolled in wheels rattling on the threshold. Someone gelled the pads and handed them to Riley. Charging to 200, she said. Clear. The man's body jerked with the shock. The monitor stuttered, then fell into a more stable rhythm. His chest rose, fell, rose again. Riley set the paddles back into place and reached for his neck. Carotid pulse, she said. Strong. BP is climbing, Hannah said. 100/60. Reyes slid an IV catheter into a vein on the man's forearm, taped it down with calm precision. Riley leaned closer. Sir, can you hear me? She asked. His eyes opened again. They were clearer this time, more focused. They went straight to her face. Then slowly they dropped to her arm. She realized what he was looking at and tugged the sleeve down by a reflex. His lips moved. Ferryman, he whispered. Riley froze. I did not catch that, she said. Her voice stayed even. You have had a cardiac arrhythmia. You might feel a little disoriented. He swallowed. You are her, he said the words rough. You are Ferryman. Reyes looked up sharply. Hannah was too busy placing EKG leads to notice. Riley kept her hand on his shoulder, the pressure firm. I do not know what you are talking about, she said. You need to rest. We will get your heart checked, and then we can talk. Korangal Sichi boy, he said. His fingers twitched as if they wanted to grab her hand. August 14th, Outpost Echo. You pulled us out of there. Riley's breath stopped at the back of her throat. For a heartbeat, the sounds of the room blurred. The monitor, the hiss of oxygen, the shuffle of shoes on linoleum all folded into a distant hum. Sir, she said at last, we are going to take you for more tests. Hannah finished the workup. Serial enzymes 12 lead EKG chest X-ray. Hannah nodded, focused on the strip of paper feeding out of the machine. Riley stepped back from the bed. We will admit you to cardiology, she said. You are stable for now. She walked out of the room without looking at Reyes. In the hallway, the light seemed too bright. She pushed through the door to the stairwell and sat down on the bottom step, elbows on her knees, head in her hands. The stairwell smelled faintly of dust and disinfectant. The green exit sign above the door buzzed softly. Reyes found her there a few minutes later. He did not sit right away. He leaned against the rail and watched her. He knows you, Reyes said. Riley did not lift her head. He thinks he knows me, she said. He called you Ferryman, Reyes said. What is that? A call sign, Riley said. From a long time ago. They do not hand out names like that for nothing, Reyes said. Riley let her hands fall. Her face was pale, but her eyes were dry. They did, she said. I dragged people back when they were halfway gone. Someone liked the metaphor. Reyes studied her for a moment. You planning to go back in there? He asked. He is stable, Riley. Riley said. Hannah will finish. That is not what I asked. Riley stared at the opposite wall. A faint line of scuff marks ran along the baseboard like someone had dragged a heavy object up and down the stairs. I do not go back, she said finally. Not if I can help it. Reyes nodded slowly. Out there, he said, meaning somewhere that was not Seattle or in here. She did not answer. Reyes pushed off the railing. His name is Daniel Rourke, he said. Former Army. I have seen that look before. He is not confused. He opened the door and stepped out. Riley watched the door close. The green glow of the exit sign washed over the metal. Later, when the shift had lulled into afternoon, Reyes sat at the nurse station and pulled his phone from his pocket. The computer systems at St. Gabriel were locked down, but public military records were not. He typed slowly. Captain Riley Cole, Army Silver Star Citation Korangal. The results populated the screen. At the top of the page in black text was a name he recognized and a date he did not want to. He scrolled once and saw coordinates written in degrees and minutes, and the phrase, extraordinary heroism under fire. Reyes set the phone face down on the desk. In the reflection on the dark screen, he could see Riley at the end of the hall, checking on a patient, her shoulders squared, her hands still. The city changed color in the late afternoon. By 5 o'clock, the gray light outside St. Gabriel had gone the shade of wet concrete. The rain had settled into a steady mist that blurred the outlines of the buildings. From the ambulance bay, the freeway looked like a slow-moving river of headlights. Inside the ER, the screens glowed a cool blue against the creeping fatigue. Riley stood at the central board with a marker in her hand. The earlier surge had faded, leaving behind a line of low-acuity complaints and a few stubborn admits waiting on beds upstairs. She drew a small asterisk beside one name. Head CT back on Bay 4, she said. No bleed, concussion only, clear him after OBS if neuro checks stay clean. Hannah nodded and made a note. Reyes flipped through the triage list. Waiting room is full of coughs and sprained ankles, he said. Flu season came early. Mercer appeared behind them, expression tighter than usual. Clinic backed up again. He said. I have 2 attendings tied up with scheduled consults. Try not to invent any disasters. He meant it as humor, but it did not land. The overhead speaker crackled. All units, this is Seattle fire. Structural collapse at downtown construction site. Multiple victims trapped. Estimated 15 to 20 injured. Trauma centers citywide prepare for incoming. St. Gabriel, you are primary. The words hung for a moment like the air had thickened around them. Then the chime sounded. Code triage, the hospital PA announced. Code triage, all available staff to the emergency department. The board in front of Riley suddenly looked too small. Mercer picked up the marker. Omar's in the OR, Shishki, he said. We will pull him to trauma when we can. I want anesthesiology on standby and radiology ready for priority reads. Reyes, convert fast track to overflow. Move anyone who can sit upright to chairs. He turned to Riley. You have bed 3, he said. Moderate traumas only. Stabilize and move them upstairs. Riley met his eyes. Understood, she said. The room shifted. Nurses pushed stretchers out of cramped bays to make room. Techs hauled extra monitors from the storage closet. Someone wheeled in the portable ultrasound machines and lined them against the wall like small gray tanks. Hannah tied her hair tighter at the base of her neck. What does a site collapse look like? She asked Reyes. Heavy, he said. Concrete rebar crush injuries. People who thought they were safe 10 minutes ago. The first siren reached them as a faint rising note under the hospital's mechanical hum. Then the ambulances began to arrive. Cold air and the smell of dust and engine exhaust flooded into the trauma bays as the doors swung open again and again. Paramedics called out vitals over the din. Hard hats and safety vests flashed in the doorway like flags from another world. 42-year-old male fell 2 stories when the platform gave way, complaining of back pain GCS 13, possible spinal involvement. They brought him to Riley's bed. She stepped to the head of the gurney. Sir, do not move your neck, she said. My name is Dr. Cole. We have you. His face was streaked with concrete dust and blood. A cracked hard hat lay on the stretcher beside him. Can you feel your arms? She asked. Your legs? Yeah, he said, teeth clenched. Hurts like hell. Riley palpated along his cervical spine, careful, each fingertip a separate instrument. No step-offs, no obvious deformity. She moved down, testing strength and sensation. Any numbness? She asked. Pins and needles. He shook his head. Just the pain, he grunted. Good, she said. We are going to get a CT of your spine. Do not try to be a hero and sit up all right. He gave a short, humorless laugh. Lady, I am done with heroics. Hannah, Riley called. C-spine protocol, CT as soon as the scanner is open. On it, Hannah said, already entering orders. Another gurney rolled past with a younger man on it, his leg twisted at a wrong angle, boot-gone socks soaked dark. Crush injury left lower leg, the medic reported. Pinned under debris for about 20 minutes, distal pulses weak. Not ours, Reyes said softly. Not yet, Riley said. Her next patient arrived minutes later. Mid-20s dust and his hair eyes a little wild. His left shoulder drooped lower than the right. Dislocated shoulder, the paramedic said. He keeps trying to stand up. Riley stepped in front of him. Stay down or I will tape you to the bed, she said. He blinked at her, then barked a short laugh that turned into a groan. She slid her hand under his elbow and palpated around the joint. On 3, she told him. You breathe in, you breathe out, I move. He started to protest, then she rotated traction and counter-traction, the joint slipping back into place with a dull, satisfying clunk. The man swore, then sagged in relief. Better, he said through a grimace. Better, she agreed. Sling ice and no lifting anything heavier than your remote for the next week. The rhythm settled in around her. Assess act move. The noise in the trauma bays was constant, but within it a pattern emerged, the hiss of oxygen, the beep of monitors, the low murmur of voices giving report and answering. Riley's hands did not pause. A nurse appeared at her side. Another inbound, she said. Field reports penetrating chest trauma. Teenage male. They left the object in place. Riley looked toward the doors. The sound of the siren was closer, sharper. When the gurney came through, even the ambient noise seemed to dim. The boy could not have been more than 17. He was thin under the stained work jacket, freckles barely visible under the dust. His eyes were open too wide. A length of rebar exited just below his left clavicle, surrounded by dried blood and plaster dust. The exposed portion jutted up like a flagpole. There was a crusted chunk of concrete still clinging to it near the skin. Name is Jason, the medic said, voice tight. We had to cut the bar to move him. The rest is still inside him. He has been hypotensive but responsive, BP 85/50, heart rate 135. We did not touch the bar on scene. There was debris leaning on it. Riley stepped to the head of the bed. Jason, she said, my name is Dr. Cole. You are at St. Gabriel. You are hurt, but you are here. His gaze flicked to her, then to the metal protruding from his chest. Am I going to die? His voice cracked on the last word. No, Riley said, not if I can help it. His breath hitched, just that, then his jaw set. Mercer arrived at her shoulder. Omar was a step behind him, still in light blue scrubs, hair damp with sweat from whatever case he had just left. We cannot move that to the OR safely, Omar said as soon as he saw the angle of the rebar. If it shifts, it will tear through the subclavian. Maybe nick the aorta. We need vascular. We need imaging. We need a plan. If we wait for all of that, he crashes in the elevator, Riley said. Look at his pressure. 78/45, Hannah read from the monitor, dropping. Mercer shook his head. This is not an ER procedure, he said. We stabilize him as best we can and take him upstairs. We do not pull that thing out down here. Riley picked up the ultrasound probe. Nobody touched the bed, she said. Nobody brushed that bar. The room quieted. Even the distant conversations along the hallway seemed to fade. She spread gel on the probe and placed it gently at the base of the rebar, watching the gray swirls on the screen. The image resolved into layers of tissue and vessel. Each tiny adjustment showed a different cross-section. Here, she said, subclavian artery. The bar is hugging it. Omar leaned closer, eyes narrowing. It is a millimeter away, he said. Maybe less, Riley said. His lung apex is right behind it. If we move him at all, gravity does the work for us. Mercer rubbed his forehead. You are suggesting what? He asked. A controlled corridor extraction, Riley said. We use a balloon occlusion catheter along the path of the bar, temporarily occlude the subclavian. I pull the rebar in one smooth motion. Omar clamps whatever is bleeding the second it is free. We fix what we can here, then we move him. That is experimental, Omar said. It is a field technique, Riley said, taught to surgeons who have nowhere else to go when metal ends up too close to arteries. I have done it 17 times. Every one of those patients left the hospital breathing. Mercer looked at her. There is no protocol for it here, he said. There was not one there either, Riley said. There were just people bleeding. Jason swallowed. I can hear you, he said. His voice shook. You know that, right? Riley shifted her attention back to him. I'm talking about options, she said. One of them keeps you alive. Do it, he said, his fingers curled in the sheet. I do not care what you call it. Mercer hesitated. The silence pressed in thick and close. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. Reyes stood at the back of the room watching Riley's face. Get me a balloon occlusion catheter, Riley said. Largest we have that will track this path. 2 units O negative at the bedside. Vascular clamp set, suction ready. Reyes moved without waiting for approval. Omar exhaled. If we do this, he said, we do it my way on the clamp. I'm not losing his arm or his brain to a bad pause. Fine by me, Riley said. She positioned herself at the side of the bed, one hand on the rebar, the other waiting for the catheter. Everyone listen, she said. No one bumps this bed, no one leans on it. When I say quiet, I mean quiet. The room stilled. Even Hannah, usually full of questions, pressed her lips together and focused on the monitor. The catheter arrived. Riley threaded it along the track of the rebar entry, guiding it with small patient movements. The ultrasound image showed its progress, a ghost moving through soft tissue. Almost there, she said, inflating. She watched the vessel lumen narrow on the screen as the balloon took shape. All right, she said, we have a 30-second window before distal tissue starts complaining. Omar, be ready on the clamp. His hands hovered a breath away from the projected path. On 3, Riley said. 1, 2, 3. She pulled. The rebar slid free with a grinding sound that scraped everyone's nerves. Blood surged bright and sudden, but Omar was already there, clamp biting down on the spurting vessel. Riley's fingers moved even faster, packing suctioning, tying where she could. BP, she called. 82/50, Hannah said. Holding, heart rate 128. Again, Riley said. 85/55. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. The hole in the chest looked smaller without the metal, just an ugly wound instead of a spear. Riley stepped back, shoulders tight, gloves slick with blood. Jason's eyes fluttered. You still with us? She asked. His mouth twitched. Yeah, he whispered, still here. Keep it that way, she said. Omar examined the field, then nodded once. We need to get him upstairs for definitive repair, he said. But he is movable now. Mercer stood near the doorway, arms at his sides. His face did not show much, but his eyes were locked on Riley. Reyes handed off a blood bag to the nurse and then looked in her direction. For a second, she let herself feel the weight in her hands, the echo of metal against bone, the remembered heat of sand under boots instead of linoleum beneath her shoes. Then she stripped off her gloves, dropped them into the bin, and reached for the next pair. Stabilize vitals, set up transport, she said, and someone get me the next patient. The night grew thinner as the hours passed. By the time they rolled Jason out of Trauma 1 and up toward the operating room, Riley could feel the ache in the muscles between her shoulder blades. Her hands had a faint tremor when she relaxed them, so she did not relax them. She scrubbed off the blood at the sink, watching pink water spiral into the drain. The scent of antiseptic soap cut through the metallic smell that seemed to cling to her nose. Nice piece of work in there, Reyes said quietly from the doorway. Riley shut off the tap. He's not out of it yet, she said. Reyes nodded once. He knew better than to answer that with reassurance. The next 2 hours blurred into a series of smaller tasks. A woman with an asthma attack that resolved after a few treatments. A drunk with a forehead laceration who tried to fight the nurse and then fell asleep sitting up. A child with a fever whose parents had already imagined the worst. Riley moved through it on habit, assessed a side-act chart. When the call came, it snapped through the noise like glass breaking. Trauma 1, the overhead spoke. Code blue, Trauma 1. Hannah was already running when Riley stepped into the hall. Omar appeared from a side corridor, hair flattened beneath a surgical cap, eyes sharp and awake in a way that said he had not slept since before the collapse. They burst into Trauma 1 together. Jason lay on the bed again. His skin was gray lips tinged blue. The fresh incision along his chest was covered with a dressing that had turned a heavy wet red. A respiratory therapist was bagging him manually. The monitor showed a flat line. How long? Riley asked. 2 minutes since we lost a pulse, Hannah said breathless. She was at the head of the bed, hands shaking slightly as she squeezed the bag. Post-op bleed, Omar said. He pressed 2 fingers to the dressing and they sank into softness. Blood oozed around the edges. Compressions, Riley snapped. A nurse climbed onto a step stool and began compressions, arms locked, body weight driving into the sternum. The sound of bone and cartilage against heel was dull and rhythmic. We will never get him back to the operating room in time, Omar said. His voice had the flat resignation of someone who had already done the calculation. We do not take him anywhere, Riley said. We do it here. Omar stared at her. Here, he repeated, in the bay. Thoracotomy tray, Riley said louder. Now! A tech hesitated at the doorway, eyes wide. You heard her, Reyes said. Move. The tray arrived, metal instruments gleaming under the overhead light. The air in the room seemed to tighten. Riley pulled on a fresh pair of gloves. Her hands were steady now, the tremor gone. Omar, she said, She said, I open. You find the bleeder. He nodded once. She took the scalpel. The chest rose and fell under the pressure of compressions. The ribs shifted with each forceful push as if they were already trying to separate. Stop compressions, Riley said. On my count, you will resume. The nurse froze, mid-press arms still locked. Riley pressed the blade into the skin just left of the sternum and drew it down in one clean line. Blood welled up bright and hot against her gloves. She set the scalpel down and took the rib spreader, inserting its arms into the incision. The metal teeth bit against bone. Now, she said. She turned the crank. The ribs opened with a series of pops that Riley felt all the way up her arms. The smell changed, a rush of hot iron-rich air spilling out of the chest cavity. Compressions through the ribs, she said. She said, gentle but deep. The nurse adjusted her position and began again this time, with her hands directly on the exposed heart through the retractor. Riley plunged her hand into the chest. Warm tissue closed around her wrist. She could feel the firm muscle of the heart under her fingers, silent and slack. There, Omar said, leaning over her shoulder. He pointed with a clamp toward a spray of arterial blood deep in the field. Intercostal branch, maybe. Might tie in with the internal mammary. Hard to see. Riley pressed her fingers into the wound, stemming the flow. Clamp, she said. Omar slipped the instrument into place where her fingers had been. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. Again, Riley said. Look for more. They worked silently, a small team of hands reaching into the open chest, finding and closing off the tiny sources of death. The monitor remained flat for long seconds that stretched into something else. Give me another epi, Riley said, and calcium. The nurse pushed medication into the line. Compressions continue, Riley said. Do not stop unless I say. Her voice had flattened, all edges smoothed out by focus. The heart under her palm flickered. Once. Twice. A sluggish contraction that did not translate to the monitor yet. Just a muscle trying to remember its job. Again, she murmured, though she was not sure if she was talking to the heart or to herself. The monitor beeped, a single spike. Another. Then a rhythm thin and fast but organized. Sinus tachycardia, Hannah said, her voice cracked. We have a pulse. Check the carotid, Riley said. Fingers pressed to Jason's neck. Pulse present, the nurse confirmed. Weak but there. Riley stepped back just enough to let Omar place the last suture. Her arms ached from holding the retractor. When she straightened, her lower back protested. She looked at the monitor again. The tracing steadied, each beat carving itself across the screen. Pack the wound, temporary closure, Omar said. He goes straight back to ICU, no more transport detours. They closed what they could in the bay. It was not pretty, but it held. Reyes handed Riley a fresh towel. She had not noticed how much blood had soaked her front until she saw the smear of red across the blue of her scrubs. You just brought him back again, he said quietly. I just did not let him die, she said. She walked to the sink and washed her hands. The water ran red, then pink, then clear. Tiny droplets clung to the underside of her wrists when she turned off the tap. In the doorway, Mercer watched. He had arrived partway through the thoracotomy and stopped just inside, out of the way. Now he stepped forward. That was not protocol, Hua said. Protocol, he said. Riley dried her hands and faced him. Protocol would have put him on a gurney that never reached the operating room, she said. He did not argue with that. You knew exactly where to cut young, he said instead, where to put your hand. I have done it before, Riley said, more times than I wanted to. In combat, Mercer said, Mirstrad. She did not deny it. He studied her as if trying to reconcile the image in front of him with the file in his head. What you did in there, he said. Most surgeons do not see that outside of textbooks. You do it in the middle of an ER with half your staff watching. Someone had to, she said. It scared me, he said. She lifted an eyebrow. That I did it, she asked, or that it worked. That I had no idea you were capable of it, he said. That I have been thinking of you as a risk when you are the reason that boy has a heartbeat. Riley glanced past him. The team was wheeling Jason out of the bay, again machines and lines, traveling with him like a strange metal flock. You made assumptions, she said. He exhaled. I did, he said. She did not reply. Later, when the adrenaline had settled into a thick residue in her limbs, the call came again. Trauma 1, the PA said. Dr. Cole to Trauma 1. Riley turned away from the chart she had opened. Her throat felt dry. Jason was on the bed again. This time his chest dressing was clean and dry. His color was better, but his lips were still pale. The monitor showed a narrow complex tachycardia. The oxygen saturation numbers glowed a worrisome 82% despite the mask on his face. Omar stood at the foot of the bed, hands on his hips. His blood pressure is dropping, Hannah said. Heart rate 145? Breath sounds, Riley asked, already reaching for her stethoscope. Clear, Hannah said. Equal, no new pneumothorax on the last film. We think pulmonary embolism, Omar said. Post-op long procedure, immobile central line. We started heparin push TPA, no significant improvement. His SATs keep falling. The ultrasound cart was at the bedside again. A tech had already brought up the images. Riley saw the right ventricle bowing, straining against a load it could not move. The clot is large, Omar said, sitting at the main pulmonary artery bifurcation. So we clear it, Riley said. We would need cardiopulmonary bypass for surgical embolectomy, Omar said. That is not happening tonight, not with this instability. Catheter-directed embolectomy, Riley said. We go up from the femoral vein, find the clot, pull it out. In the ER, Omar said. In the ER, Riley said. We have ultrasound, we have fluoroscopy, we have catheters. I have done it. Twice, Omar said, in a forward operating base if your file is to be believed. It is, Riley said. He ran a hand over his face. If we lose the clot in the wrong direction, he dies, he said. If we stand here and watch his pressure fade, he dies, Riley said. Jason's chest rose and fell too fast. Each breath shallow as if air had to fight to get past the blockage. Riley stepped to the side of the bed and placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. Jason, she said, I need you to hear me. His eyes opened heavy. What now? He whispered. There is a blood clot in your lungs, she said. We tried medicine. It is not enough. I can go in with a catheter and pull it out. It is risky. So is doing nothing. He swallowed. You are the one who pulled the metal out of my chest, he said. Yes, she said. Then do this too, he said. She nodded. Reyes, she said. I need a vascular access kit guide wire aspiration catheter. Get interventional radiology on the line and tell them we are borrowing their toys. He moved. Riley draped the groin and palpated for the femoral pulse. Her fingers were sure. The skin was warm under her gloves. Local, she said. The nurse injected lidocaine. Jason flinched, then stilled. You are going to feel pressure, Riley said. Not pain. Keep breathing for me. She made a small incision and slid the needle into the vein, watching the dark return in the hub. The guide wire slipped in next, then the sheath. On the screen under fluoroscopy, the catheter appeared as a white thread in the shadowed map of blood vessels. Advancing through the iliac, she said more for the team than for herself, into the inferior vena cava, entering the right atrium. Watch the rhythm, Omar said. The monitor stuttered once as the catheter tip brushed the heart, then settled. Into the right ventricle, Riley said, now the pulmonary artery. The outline of the clot came into view as a filling defect, a pale mass blocking the flow. Positioning aspiration tip, she said. Omar ready on suction. He placed his hand on the control. Now, she said. He activated suction. The catheter vibrated faintly under her hand as negative pressure sucked material into its lumen. On the monitor, the oxygen saturation numbers began to climb. 84, 88, 92. Jason's chest rose a little deeper with each breath. Again, she said, short bursts. They repeated the maneuver until the defect on the screen shrank, then disappeared. Pulling back, Fussell, Riley said. She withdrew the catheter, carefully watching the screen until it was safely in the larger venous structures, then out through the sheath. She applied pressure to the puncture site. BP, she asked. 110/70, Hannah said. She sounded stunned. Sats at 96, 8, the respiratory therapist added. Jason opened his eyes again. They were clearer this time. You are still here, Riley said. You are stubborn, he murmured. So are you, she said. Omar held up the catheter. There were dark red clots visible in the collection chamber. He looked at Riley, then at Mercer, who had appeared at the edge of the room sometime during the procedure. Where did you learn to do that? Omar asked. Korangal Valley, 2013, Riley said. We were 3 hours from the nearest surgical facility. No helicopter. We improvised. She did not elaborate. They secured Jason for transfer back to ICU. When the room finally emptied, Riley stepped out into the hallway. Her legs felt heavier than they should have, as if the floor were made of something thicker than tile. Mercer stood there, one hand on the doorframe. That is 3 times, he said. In one night? Riley leaned her shoulder against the wall. Feels like more, she said. You know that most hospitals would not let you touch a patient after the first, he said. Too much liability, too much fear. Most hospitals do not build themselves next to an interstate and a half-finished skyline, she said. He watched her for a moment. You have been carrying this alone for a long time, he said. There was no accusation in it, just fact. Riley looked away. I survived a place I did not plan to survive, she said. Then I left. I thought if I worked somewhere with hot water, clean sheets, full supply cabinets, it would be easier to breathe. And, he asked. She thought of the feel of Jason's heart under her hand, the sound of the rebar scraping free, the look in Rourke's eyes when he said her call sign. It is different, she said, but it is not lighter. She pushed off the wall. I am going home, she said. Mercer did not try to stop her. In the parking lot, the rain had thinned to a mist again. The hospital windows glowed in the dark, a stack of yellow rectangles. Riley sat in her car with the engine off. The interior smelled faintly of coffee and old receipts. Her hands rested on the steering wheel. For a long time, she did not move. Her throat tightened, and without warning, tears began to spill hot and silent down her cheeks. She pressed the heel of her hand to her eyes, but it did not stop. Images chased each other behind her eyelids. Sand and dust instead of concrete dust. The sound of mortar fire instead of ambulance sirens. 6 men bleeding on rough ground, the sky the color of smoke. Oh. Why are you still here? She whispered, though she could not have said if she meant the memories or herself. She let the tears run until they slowed on their own. By the time she wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket, the clock on the dashboard read 4 a.m. She could have turned the key and driven away. Instead, she opened the door, stepped back into the damp air, and walked toward the hospital lights. In the ICU, the corridors were quiet. The monitors in each room beeped softly, their rhythms overlapping into a single muted music. Rourke was sitting in a recliner beside his bed, a blanket over his lap, the glow of a tablet screen lighting his features. He looked up when Riley appeared in the doorway. Thought you might have gone home, he said. Could not sleep, she said. He gestured at the chair across from him. Sit, he said. She did. They were silent for a moment. The soft hiss of oxygen from the wall outlet filled the space between words. I remember you, he said finally. Did you think I would not? It has been a long time, Riley said. Not to me, he said. Some days I'm still there. He watched her face. You are the one who worked on all of us at once, he said. You kept talking even when you were up to your elbows in blood. You told Carver about his kid starting kindergarten. You told Daniels you would not let him miss opening day. You told me I would not die lying in that dirt. Riley stared at her hands. We were surrounded, she said. No air support, no clean field. I had what was in the medic bag and some extra ties. You were all critical, all of you. You kept us alive for 11 hours, he said. Under fire, that is what they wrote in the citation. They wrote pretty words, she said. They pinned a medal on a uniform and took a picture. What they did not write, he said, was that when they loaded us on the helicopter, you collapsed. That they had to carry you onto the second bird. That you would not let go of Daniel's hand until the medic pried your fingers off. Riley closed her eyes for a second. When they told me later that you all made it, she said, I felt nothing. No relief, no joy. Just this hollow space where something should have been. That is shock, he said. It is what happens when a person carries more than they should. I left, she said. As soon as they let me, I signed the papers. I thought if I walked away from that valley, it would stay there. Rourke studied her. You walked all the way to Seattle, he said, and it still climbs onto your table. She did not argue. You have spent 10 years running from one day, he said. It has followed you into every room since. Riley swallowed. I do not know how to put it down, she said. He leaned forward, wincing a little as his chest protested. You do not, he said. You carry it differently. You stop pretending it is not there. You let other people know it exists so they can help you shoulder it. She looked up at him. In there, he said, tipping his head toward the general direction of the ER, you moved like you did in that valley. Only this time you had lights and extra hands and a roof. You did not fail any of them. His voice softened. You did not fail us either. Her throat closed around the words she might have said. You saved my life twice, he said. That is not something you get to run from. She sat back in the chair, feeling the weight of what he had said settle next to the weight she already knew far too well. She sat back in the chair, feeling the weight of what he had said settle beside the weight she already carried. The ICU lights were softer than the ER's. The beeping in Rourke's room was slow and regular like a metronome. Outside the window, the first pale streaks of dawn were starting to wash the sky. Rourke watched her face. They told us you left, Eve, he said. No forwarding address, no contact. One day you were there, the next day your bunk was empty. I could not stay, Riley said. Could not or would not, he asked. She rubbed her hands over her face. I could not keep standing next to that valley, she said. Every time I walked outside those walls, I could still smell it, hear it. I thought if I changed everything, it might finally shut up. Did it? He asked. She gave him a look that answered the question. He sighed, then shifted in his chair. I have been trying to find you for 10 years, he said. Tried to go through channels. No one knew where you went, or they did and did not think it was my business. Probably both, she said. He smiled brief. Then I roll my truck on a rainy night in Seattle, he said. And there you are with that tattoo and those hands that do not shake when they should. Sometimes they do, she said. Not when it counts, he said. There was a knock on the door frame. Riley turned. Mercer stood there. He looked smaller in the soft ICU light, his shoulders rounded under his white coat. Sorry to interrupt, he said. Dr. Cole administration wants you in the conference room. Now, she asked. Now, he said. Work against meeting. Them. This about tonight, he asked. About the last 12 hours, Mercer said. I imagine so. Riley stood up. I will stop by later, she said to Rourke. You better, he said. He lifted his hand. She hesitated, then took it. His fingers squeezed once firm, then released. The hallway outside the ICU felt colder. The floors gleamed under the early light. Someone had buffed them before sunrise. Mercer walked beside her without speaking. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant cartwheels of a housekeeping staff member making their rounds. At the elevator, Riley pressed the button. The metal doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cleaning products and exhausted coffee. Is this a disciplinary meeting? She asked. Mercer looked at the panel of buttons as if it contained an easier question. You will have to see, he said. That was not an answer, but it was the only one she was going to get. On the 4th floor, the conference room sat at the end of a short hallway. The glass in his door was frosted, the kind that let light through, but no details. Mercer opened it for her. The room inside felt too bright after the ICU. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A long table took up most of the space, surrounded by chairs. A carafe of coffee sat untouched near the center. Dr. Elaine Voss sat on one side, her posture straight, a tablet propped in front of her. Her hair was pulled back in a silver-streaked twist. Next to her was a man in a dark suit, neat tie wire-rimmed glasses, Richard Chan, hospital legal. Omar sat further down, scrub top, under a jacket scrub pants tucked into shoe covers he had probably forgotten to take off. Reyes stood near the wall, arms folded loosely. Dr. Kolska, Voss said, please sit. Riley chose a chair halfway down the table. The leather squeaked as she settled. The silence in the room had a different texture than the ICU. Less fragile, more sharpened. Voss tapped the tablet. We have been reviewing the events of the last night, she said, specifically your involvement in the construction collapse and what followed. Chan slid a thin folder across the table toward Riley. She did not reach for it. You performed a controlled extraction of a penetrating chest injury, Chan said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. An emergency thoracotomy in the trauma bay and a catheter-directed pulmonary embolectomy, all within a 12-hour window. All on the same patient, Omar added. The kid is alive this morning. Riley watched their faces, trying to read where this was going. If this is where you tell me I am fired, she said, can we skip the recap? Chan gave a small smile that did not reach his eyes. If this were a disciplinary meeting, he said, you would not have Dr. Voss and 3 of your colleagues in here with you. You would have me and HR. So what is it? Riley asked. A recognition of a gap, Voss said, and an opportunity. Riley did not relax, but the line of tension across her shoulders shifted. A gap, she repeated. Mercer leaned forward, palms flat on the table. You did 3 things last night that most of our staff have only ever seen in journals, he said. You did them accurately under pressure, and you saved lives we would have otherwise lost. You also did them outside the scope of standard ER protocol, Chan said, which from a legal standpoint is frankly terrifying. That does not mean it was wrong. It means we have no framework for it. The framework exists, Riley said. It just was not written here. In the military, Voss said. Yes, Riley said. Voss nodded once. We can respond to that in one of 2 ways, she said. We can clamp down and restrict these techniques, insist on strict adherence to existing civilian protocols, and hope we never face situations that require more. Or, Omar said, picking up the thread, we admit that we are sitting on a resource and we start learning from it. Voss slid another document toward Riley. This one had more pages. The title was printed in bold at the top. Proposal, Voss said, Center for Trauma Innovation and Combat Medicine Integration. Working title. Riley stared at the words. You want to build a program, she said slowly. We want you to build it, Voss said. With support, with structure, with oversight. You would serve as director. You would formalize the techniques you have, adapt them to our environment, and train others, nurses, residents, attendings. And the liability, Riley asked, looking at Chan. Is lower when a hospital can show that a procedure is part of a recognized vetted protocol instead of something a single physician did on a gut instinct, Chan said. Good instincts for the record, but courts like paperwork. Mercer cleared his throat. I spent 6 months treating you like a problem, he said. Like someone who did not fit. That was my mistake. Seeing you work last night made that very clear. Riley felt heat rise behind her sternum, though she could not have said if it was anger or something else. You assumed I was a risk because I came from a place you do not understand, she said. I assumed you were going to break things I did not know how to fix, he said. And then you fixed things I did not know were breakable. He paused. I'm sorry, he said. said. Reyes shifted his weight. For what it is worth, he said, we are not the kind of place that gets to pretend the world outside is neat. The freeway, the port downtown construction, the weather, all of it brings the mess here. Last night is not an anomaly, Omar said. It is a preview. I would rather we be ready next time. Riley looked down at the file in front of her. What if I say no, she asked. Voss did not hesitate. Then you continue as an attending, Voss said. We will still have to address the use of non-standard procedures on a case-by-case basis. We will likely restrict certain techniques. We will have lost an opportunity. You will still be here, but parts of what you know will stay in your head. Riley lifted the top page. Under the title was a short paragraph outlining the mission. Development of advanced trauma protocols, integration of combat medicine principles into civilian care, simulation training, outreach. Her eyes caught on a sentence halfway down. Collaboration with military and veterans affairs facilities is anticipated. She exhaled slowly. I spent 10 years trying not to be the person in that citation, she said. Maybe you do not have to be only that person, Voss said. Riley set the paper down. I do not want to be your poster case, she said. I do not want my face on a brochure about war. That is not what we are asking, Voss said. We are asking for a program, not a statue. Riley thought of Rourke sitting in his recliner speaking quietly about the men in that valley. She thought of Sarah's and Miguel's she had met over the years, medics who had done impossible work and then stepped into civilian life like they had to hide it. I will do it under one condition, Riley said. Voss inclined her head. Name it, she said. This center does not just train surgeons and residents, Riley said. It becomes a bridge. We bring in combat medics who are transitioning out. We give them a pathway into civilian medicine that values what they already know. Not just a thank you in a pamphlet. Reyes's mouth twitched in what might have been the start of a smile. Chan considered for a moment. From an administrative standpoint, he said, there are credentialing hurdles, scope of practice issues, but none of that is impossible. It would also look very good at a board meeting, Mercer said. On the human side and the numbers side. Voss nodded again. Done, she said. We will write it into the charter. The board has already expressed interest in outreach. This gives it shape. Riley sat back in the chair. The overhead lights hummed. The coffee on the table had gone cold, a thin skin forming on its surface. Why me? She asked quietly. You have plenty of people with cleaner records. Because you have done it, Omar said. Not in a lab, not on a mannequin, on real bodies in bad places. Because when a steel bar was sitting 1 millimeter from a major artery, you did not freeze, Reyes said. Because you are already changing the way people practice here, whether you mean to or not, Mercer said. Voss folded her hands. And because we would be fools to pretend that what you carry is not invaluable, she said. The words sat between them. Riley picked up the pen that had been placed near the folder. Her hand hovered above the signature line. For 10 years, she said, every time someone mentioned that day, it felt like they were reaching inside my chest and poking a bruise. She glanced at Reyes. He met her eyes steadily. This does not erase that, she said. It does not make it good. No, Voss said. It just gives it somewhere to go, Riley said. She set the pen down on the line and signed her name. The letters looked strange. She was used to scribbling them on orders on charts in small boxes. Seeing them under the words Program Director made them feel like someone else's handwriting. When she pushed the folder back, Voss picked it up with a small satisfied nod. We will take care of the paperwork, Voss said. In the meantime, get some rest. You look like you have been awake for 2 days. Feels like it, Riley said. They stood, chairs scraped softly against the floor. In the hallway outside the conference room, the light from a nearby window spilled in pale and cool. The green exit sign glowed above a door at the far end, its arrow pointing out. Riley did not look at it long. She rolled up her left sleeve instead. The tattoo on her forearm caught the light. Numbers, symbols, the small curved line that marked a valley halfway around the world. For years it had felt like a mark that said you were here. You did not leave all of you behind. Now looking at it with the ink of her new signature still drying on paper inside the room, it looked slightly different. She let the sleeve fall and took a breath. "Congratulations," Reyes said quietly beside her. "Ask me how I feel about it after I have slept," she said. He chuckled. "Fair," he said. She started down the hall. The hospital was waking up in stages. Day shift nurses checking assignment boards, lab techs wheeling carts, the smell of fresh coffee pushing back against the scent of antiseptic. Riley walked toward the elevators, toward the ICU, toward Rourke's room. Her legs were tired, her hands were empty for the first time all night. Inside her chest, the familiar weight had shifted just enough that she could tell it was not in exactly the same place anymore. 6 months changed the 4th floor. The conference room that once smelled of stale coffee and dry paperwork now carried a different scent. Plastic from new mannequins, marker ink, the faint rubber of training tourniquets. The long table was gone. In its place stood 3 trauma bays, built out of modular walls, each with a mannequin on a bed, monitors lit up, carts stocked like the real ER downstairs. Whiteboards covered the walls, filled with diagrams of chest cavities, vessel maps, and protocol trees written in different colors. Riley stood at the front of the room in navy scrubs, a dry erase marker in her hand. 24 people watched her. Residents, nurses, paramedics, a respiratory therapist. 3 men and women in plain clothes with military bearing that did not fade just because they were out of uniform. On the nearest board, she had drawn a simple rib cage with a bold line representing an incision. "When you are dealing with penetrating thoracic injuries," she said, "your job is not to make it pretty. Your job is to buy time." She tapped the line that marked a major vessel. "This artery gives you minutes, not hours. If you stall for a perfect setting, your patient does not make it there." Hannah stood near the front, a pen poised over her notebook, but not moving much. Her attention was on Riley's hands. "Dr. Kim," Riley said, "walk me through the steps of an emergency thoracotomy." Hannah set the pen down and stepped up to the mannequin. "Left anterolateral incision," she said, "along the 5th intercostal space." She picked up the scalpel from the tray. Her hand did not shake. "Full thickness through skin and subcutaneous tissue," she said, "avoiding the internal mammary as much as possible, then rib spreader." She placed the instrument and opened the plastic ribs. The mechanism clicked. The foam and silicone parted. "Access the thoracic cavity," Hannah continued. "Identify the source of bleeding. Clamp if it is vascular, pack if it is parenchymal." "And if you cannot see it?" Riley asked. Hannah glanced back at her. "Cross-clamp the aorta," she said. "You buy time until you can get definitive repair." Riley nodded. "Good," she said. "Faster than your first simulation." Hannah smiled, quick and surprised. Ben stood in the 2nd row, arms crossed, eyes narrowed, not with skepticism, but with concentration. He had dark ink smudged on his thumb where he had been taking notes. He raised his hand. "Dr. Cole," he said, "how do you decide when to actually do this in the field instead of pushing for the OR? I mean, we have the skill now. That does not mean we use it every time." Riley capped the marker. "That decision is why you train until your hands know this without your brain catching up," she said. "You look at the whole picture. Vital signs, distance to the operating room, stability of the corridor between here and there. Do you have enough time to go upstairs? If the answer is no, you create your own room down here." He frowned slightly. "And if you are wrong, she asked. "Then you will know you did not freeze," she said. "You made a choice with the best information and the best skills you had." She let that sit for a second. No one spoke. "All right," she said. "Break into your groups. Scenario 1 is a chest stab with a pericardial tamponade. I want the first team on the table in 30 seconds. Chairs scraped. People moved. At the back of the room, one of the civilian-dressed participants lingered. Sarah Ortiz, short hair, faint limp scars on her forearm from an old blast wound. She had a name badge clipped to her shirt that identified her as EMT trainee. She waited until the others had claimed their spots around the mannequins, then stepped closer to Riley. "Dr. Cole," she said. "Sarah," Riley answered. "I just wanted to say," Sarah began. She paused, searching for the words. 8 months after I got out, I was shelving groceries at a market on Rainier. I thought everything I knew was something I was supposed to forget. Her fingers brushed unconsciously at the edge of one of her scars. "Here," she said, nodding at the simulation lab, "I hand someone a chest tube and nobody looks at me like I am crazy. They look at me like I know what I am doing." "You do know what you are doing," Riley said. Sarah blew out a breath that shook a little. "I did," she said. "Out there. I did not think it counted anymore." "It counts," Riley said. It always did." Sarah nodded, swallowed, and joined one of the teams. The session ran another hour. The mannequins were opened and closed, chest tubes placed, aorta clamped and unclamped suction canisters filled with artificial blood. Riley moved from station to station, correcting a hand position, adjusting a clamp, asking questions until the answers came without hesitation. When it was over and the last group filtered out, Riley stood alone for a moment in the quiet. The monitors were still on, their steady green lines traced across empty screens. Hannah returned a tablet in her hand. "Simulation scores are in, Shreya," she said. "Our trauma response times are in the 94th percentile compared to national data." Riley raised an eyebrow. "That is good," she said. "It is ridiculous," Hannah said, "in a good way." She handed Riley the tablet. The chart showed bars climbing well above a dotted average line. Time to incision, time to transfusion, time to definitive airway. All dropping since the program started. "You did that," Hannah said. "We did that," Riley corrected. "You, Ben, nursing, Miguel, Omar, all of you." Hannah hesitated. "Do you still think about it?" she asked. "The valley." Riley looked at the whiteboard behind her. The lines she had drawn for ribs and vessels had started to smear at the edges, colors bleeding into each other. "Every day," she said. "Does it still feel the same?" Hannah asked. Riley considered. "It hurts," she said. "Some days more than others, but it is not the only thing in the room anymore." Hannah watched her, then nodded once like someone accepting an answer that would have to be enough for now. A pager buzzed on the table. Riley picked it up. "ICU," she said. "Rourke." She left the lab and stepped into the hallway. The afternoon light coming through the windows was bright and thin, the kind that made everything look more distant. The ICU had changed in small ways. There was a bulletin board by the nurses' station with a flyer for a veteran support group. Rourke's name was on it as a contact. He sat in a chair near the window of a small consultation room, a plaid shirt on instead of a hospital gown. A badge hung from his neck, volunteer patient advocate. He looked up as she entered. "Busy morning," he giggled. He said. "Simulation," she said. "No one died. A good sign." He smiled. "How is the Empire?" he asked. "It is a small program," she said, "not an empire." "Yet," he said. He gestured to the chair opposite him. She sat. "They called from Walter Reed again," she said. "They want someone to help design their new forward surgical training. They keep saying my name on the voicemail." "Did you call them back?" he asked. "Not yet," she said. He tilted his head. "What is the worst part?" he asked. "Going back in your head or the thought of walking into a room full of uniforms again?" "Both," she said. He nodded. "You walked into a room full of white coats, Kim," he said. "You survived that." She huffed out a small breath that might have been a laugh. "They are not exactly the same," she said. "No," he said. "But fear is fear. You are already doing the thing they are asking you to talk about. Only here you get better coffee." She thought about the training center, about Sarah's quiet thanks, about Hannah's steady hands. "They want to take what happened there and turn it into curriculum," she said. "You already did that," he said. "You just did it for St. Gabriel first." She looked at him. "I'm thinking about saying yes," she said. "I am not surprised," he said. He reached across the small table. This time she took his hand without hesitation. "I'm not going to tell you it will be easy," he said. "I'm just going to remind you that the last time you were asked to do something hard, 6 men walked out of a valley who had no business walking." She squeezed his hand once and let go. "I will call them," she said. "Good," he said. On her way back down, she found Mercer waiting outside the elevator. He held a folder that looked familiar, the sort legal liked to produce for formal moments. "You looking for me?" she asked. "I was headed to you," he said. "The board met this morning. They approved full funding for the center for the next 3 years. They also want to replicate it at 2 more hospitals in the network." He handed her the folder. Inside was a typed summary graphs, projected budgets. Her name appeared near the top more than once. "They also submitted your name to present at the College of Surgeons conference," he said. "The outcomes speak loudly." Riley closed the folder without reading all of it. "Congratulations," he added. She gave him a look. "To you as well," she said. "Your department is the one they are pointing at." He shifted, looking almost uncomfortable. "You have changed the way we respond downstairs," he said. "The way our residents think. The way I think." He took a breath. "I was wrong about you," he said. "I keep saying it, but I feel the need to keep saying it." "I heard you the first time," she said. Her tone softened. "You are doing something about it. That matters more." He nodded. A familiar chime sounded overhead. "Attention, the PA system said. Incoming multi-vehicle collision on I-5. 4 criticals, multiple minors. Trauma team to the emergency department." Riley felt the shift inside herself. The click from quiet to ready. Mercer glanced at her. "You are up," he said. "Center director or ER attending," she said. "Which hat do you want?" "Both," he said. She turned toward the stairwell. The green exit sign glowed above the door, its arrow still pointed outward. She used the stairs anyway, moving down toward the sound of the hospital waking into another crisis. The ER was already in motion when she arrived. Nurses cleared halls, gurneys lined up. The doors to the ambulance bay were closed, but the sirens outside were loud now, pressing against the glass. Hannah was at one bed, pulling on gloves. Ben checked a ventilator. Sarah stood near the supply cart, restocking airway kits with Reyes, their movements synchronized. Riley stepped into the center of it. "Kim," she called. "You have airway on bed 1, Ben Rhesus on bed 2. Sarah, you are on lines with Reyes. 2 large bore on everyone coming through here unless I say otherwise." They answered without hesitation. The first set of doors slid open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of rain and gasoline and something metallic. "Let us go to work," Riley said. They moved as a unit. Riley did not need to put her hands on every patient. She watched, stepped in where the pattern faltered, corrected a technique, made a rapid decision about who needed the CT scanner first and who needed the OR before the scanner. Her hands still knew how to cut, how to clamp, how to hold a heart that had forgotten itself. Now they also knew how to guide other hands. By dawn, the worst of it had passed. The critical patients were in surgery or ICU, the minor injuries were patched and waiting for discharge. The trauma bay stood empty for a few minutes, just long enough to feel unusual. Riley walked into the silence. The overhead lights were still on, but someone had turned them down a notch. The room smelled of saline and latex and the faint chemical tang of antiseptic. She stopped at the foot of one of the beds and rolled up her left sleeve. The tattoo on her forearm was clear in the pale light. The coordinates, the small curved line for a valley far away. Below it, in smaller script added months ago, were 2 words: St. Gabriel. Her thumb traced the old ink, then the new. "You were a wound," she said softly. "Now you are a map." She let the sleeve fall. Outside, the sky over Seattle had shifted from black to a washed-out blue. The rain had stopped. The hospital windows reflected the first light. Riley stepped out of the trauma bay and walked toward the noise of the day shift beginning. Nurses laughing quietly, a clerk tapping at a keyboard, someone wheeling a breakfast cart past. She did not feel lighter. The weight was still there. It sat differently now, spread across more shoulders, woven into monitors and whiteboards, and the quiet confidence of a team that knew what to do. She kept walking into the brightening corridors, hands empty, ready to be filled again. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.